Let's take a closer look at these two blood properties, viscosity and osmolarity, and we will see how, when either one of them is too high or too low, they result in health consequences. Here's viscosity, which is the thickness of blood, and this is osmolarity, which has to do with solute concentration in the plasma. So, when viscosity is too high, it increases blood pressure, and that places an enormous burden on the heart, and so it results in heart problems. If the viscosity is too low, then the blood is too thin and it ends up with too much bleeding, excessive and unnecessary bleeding. Osmolarity. If the osmolarity is too high, water enters blood vessels and so blood volume and blood pressure go up. So osmolarity, increased osmolarity leads to high blood pressure. If it's too low, it ends up with edema. A child who is a victim of starvation ends up with a swollen belly, which is really edema. So we're going to take a look at how starvation ends up in edema. So here we have a child that is starving, and as a result, the dietary intake of protein is very low because during times of famine, it is very hard to get protein. So when the dietary intake of protein is low, then plasma protein production goes down because there are not enough protein raw materials to make plasma proteins. When the plasma protein production goes down, plasma protein levels in blood go down. We've just learned that plasma protein levels have something to do with osmolarity. So blood osmolarity also goes down. When blood osmolarity goes down, reabsorption in the capillary also goes down. So when that happens, more fluid leaves the capillary than enters. So fluid leaves blood vessels. And this ends up with an accumulation of fluid, and we call this edema. Let's take a look at another example. Alcoholism, as we all know, can lead to liver damage, and liver damage can lead to edema. So let's see how that happens. Normally, the liver makes plasma proteins. The liver is like a factory. It makes majority of the proteins that end up in the plasma. So alcoholism causes liver damage, and as a result, plasma protein production goes down. And therefore, plasma protein levels go down. We've just learned that plasma protein levels have a lot to do with blood osmolarity. So blood osmolarity goes down. When that happens, reabsorption in the capillary also goes down, decreases. When reabsorption decreases, more fluid leaves blood vessels. Where do they end up? In the tissue. And an accumulation of fluid in the tissue is called edema. Let's take a look at a different example. It's the opposite of what we just saw, and that is how diabetes ends up with high blood pressure. So a person with diabetes can end up with high blood pressure. We all know that diabetes is characterized by high blood sugar. So when the blood sugar levels go up, they influence blood osmolarity. So blood osmolarity also increases. When blood osmolarity increases, more fluid is drawn into the capillary, so reabsorption increases and fluid enters blood vessels. When this happens, the blood volume increases. And we all know that when blood volume increases, blood pressure increases as well. So that's how a person with diabetes can end up with high blood pressure.